It's Lloyd. I'm back with JC from the Quranic Endgame, and of course, Emmanuel Goldstein, all the way here from 1984. Of course, JC is joining us from the Bitcoin salt mines in Guadalajara, Chihuahua, Mexico. So guys, Emmanuel, hello, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm glad to be back. I wanted to add a few things last time. There's so many things to talk about, but maybe we can cover some of these things today.
Yeah, of course, we can. We can mention some of those. And tell me, what did you take away from the talk last week and from the information we've shared, all of this interesting MOONoTheism pagan stuff?
No, your whole series is very interesting. You always cover Islam from a perspective that other people usually don't, and that's I feel that's what sets you apart, and that's why I like talking about this stuff. Even though I don't know very much about Islam, but I know about some of these. Pagan groups, some of these pagan sects and heresies that play a role in its development.
Yeah, no, we'll get into more of that. There's more coming in. I've got another series that is planned for very shortly too. I've got a whole new series which I've been sitting on for a long time. And JC, welcome. How are you doing? And yeah, what have you been taking away so far?
I'm very well. It's glad to actually be back and continue with this series. It's really great. The feedback from Muslims so far is that this is upsetting them quite a bit. I've had to block more people from this series so far than any other, and that is always a good sign. Normally, the feedbacks are the sort of things of, oh, Islam is not pagan at all, and it doesn't have these connections. And then they quote something from the Quran, but they don't seem to understand that the Quran says some things, but Islam has a different origin story. So the Quran says those who follow Jesus will be superior to those who disbelieve until the day of judgment. And they say, no, that's actually, let me explain why that is not stolen from Christians. Or it says that Jesus actually dies in a couple of verses. So the Quran says things, but Islam is a different thing. And that's actually what we are exploring here. The previous session was absolutely phenomenal, a lot of incredible stuff. So when they created in Islam, they had to borrow from some traditions, and they certainly didn't do that from Judeo-Christian traditions. So it's really good to see this and start putting those pieces together.
Yeah, we're going to start talking about some of that tomorrow with Usama and yourself. We'll be starting to talk about some of the sources of these stories in the Quran, the Zoroastrian, the pagan, the Gnostic, Christian, Jewish, mythical sources that clearly are all borrowed. So yeah, let's tell you what. We'll start with something you're going to talk to us about just for a few minutes. And what you can do, Emmanuel, is maybe next week you can prepare like a few minutes on one of the topics that also interests you. Then we can present that as well. Well, we didn't speak before, so JC, go ahead.
Okay, well, this is just very briefly. We all know that nowadays it is absolutely forbidden to do any drawings of Muhammad. If you do, you're not going to live very long. But as I was actually doing a little bit of, checking, it looks like that is quite a modern ruling. And I failed to actually find in the Sharia or anything uh, historical that says that that's the case. So this is something very modern. As we can see here, there are lots of images, particularly during the Ottoman period, where they had no problem in the courts of the caliphs doing drawings and this art stuff to do with Muhammad. Sometimes they will cover his face, but that happens late. So it looks almost as though they had no problem with doing this art about Muhammad, but once non-Muslims started to draw Muhammad, that became an issue. And it's bizarre that no Muslim could believe that there are drawings of Muhammad, yet we've had them there for the majority of the time of Islam, and it has very recently changed.
Right. We've had Tom Smith, who's had an account for about 15 minutes, come on the channel to give us his wisdom. And Tom, unfortunately, goodbye. Say goodbye to the camera. Bye bye. We saw, in fact, on the series we've done with Odon, that if you look at that pillar that Muslims used to stone, that pillar has changed location more than once. Now, if you go, for instance, to a location in Jerusalem, it's not like, the Temple Mount is here, then next week they move it down the street, then a month later it's on the other side of the hill. No, but the ancient historical location of, the little pillar they stone is in totally several different locations according to the photographic record. And it used to be on a street with a little store with a Coca-Cola sign next to it. And they used to stone it there. It was one pillar. Then it was on top of a mountain somewhere. Now it's like 3 pillars somewhere, and it's somewhere else. And like, what the hell? So yeah, they have a little thing for, shall we say, altering history in creative ways.
Yes, and somehow the Muslims think that whatever is happening now was like this from day one, and they are obviously not allowed to explore anything. I just find some things to be very surprising, that you just look at how things were 100 years ago, and they were quite different. So yeah, it looks like they have gone through a process of changing things, and they never stopped, not to this day.
Yeah, and Muhammad's got a halo around him. You can see the flames around his body. That's a whole big halo thing. Any comments from you, Emmanuel, before we
Yeah,
move on?
actually, the drawing style is very similar to the drawings in Manichaeism and of Mani. Is very similar, especially, and you can see that very well. It has a heavy Buddhist influence. I mean, on the one hand, it has these halos, which is sort of similar to in Christianity with the saints, but at the same time, like when you see this fire and all this stuff, is yeah, like this, for instance, heavily influenced by Buddhism and by Manichaeism, which also had heavy, especially in the art style, Manichaeism had a heavy Buddhist influence.
Yeah, we're going to do a series on that. That's definitely in the works, so that's coming as well. Emmanuel, I've got the notes on that. We've definitely got to examine that in more depth. There's something very odd. Yeah.
I thought that this fire around Muhammad was that he had just leveled up to Saint Saiyan. If you got the reference,
see,
well done.
if you look at all the Christian and Jewish saints like Jesus and Moses and Abraham on the photo on the left there, they only have a halo around their heads, whereas he's got it around his whole body. So he's got the glow around his entire body, because he's the dragon,
Can you show some of these other images, make them a bit bigger? Not the ones unrelated. I mean the drawings of Muhammad. Okay.
Yeah, can you zoom in on the
interesting.
photo?
Yeah. You can see the heavy Asian influence.
Yeah, here the one on the left has the halo, and then this one here has that power. That fire. So you want me to do? Let's see if I can figure it out.
Akra says this Islamic practice, the stoning of pillars, was observed in some cultures. In ancient Greece, it was a ritualistic act known as lithobolia. What's interesting? If you go to Yemen, which we've been discussing in the series, they actually had active trade with the Greek Empire. So they had active trade. They were going to Greece and Spain, apparently Rome. They were going to also with the Byzantine Empire. So they were actually bringing artifacts back, like the various pantheon of gods. They were bringing back statues and various things. So they had direct contact. So that could explain where some of this comes from.
Yeah, and you can see the influences of the different cultures. I always find these drawings fascinating. I know there's many of them, and you can see many different styles from many different regions. And this is really similar to Manichaeism, where they combined basically so many religions and so many influences from so many cultures into one.
Right. So, JC, any other thoughts you want to share about this? Because this is something you want to investigate.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to actually try to share one more. One sec. If I can click on the thing. Well, so this image here, I thought either that is something weird to do with Mohammed, or he was just leveling up to Super Saiyan
In
in his living
9,000.
form.
Yeah. No, actually, that style and that glow that comes from Buddhism. Usually, Bodhisattva Avalokitesvara, Guanyin Pusa, is usually portrayed that way, or or at least the various bodhisattvas in Buddhism are
Yeah,
portrayed with
Afghanistan
that
was Buddhist,
kind of
heavily
glow
Buddhist.
around them, fiery glow. You see that in almost all the portrays, the Buddhist portrays of bodhisattvas.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I mean, yeah, Afghanistan was Buddhist as well before they destroyed the Buddhist culture. Yeah, yes. So that's Saint Goku, peace be upon him. Sorry, the prophet Goku. Okay, yes. So maybe we should jump into what we're here to talk about. Okay, so we spoke last about Hagar's 1,200 kilometer walk. Okay, whereas she, yeah, 1,200 kilometers with a kid and a bottle of water across 1,200 kilometers of the most arid desert. I've actually driven through remote regions of the Rubal Khali. Oh my gosh, it is insane. There is nothing out there. I've driven through
And
extensive regions
in
of
how
desert.
many days?
They don't say, but Abraham walked there, then he walked back, and then afterwards he would come on his rocket-powered horse and go in like one day.
Okay, well, yeah, so, yeah, couldn't have taken them too long if they only had one bottle of water.
Yep, exactly. Could not have been. So yeah. So so Hagar and infant Ishmael traveled 1,200 kilometers on foot across harsh, uninhabited desert. Right, they were left under a tree and all of that, and of course, then they didn't find the Kaaba of all things, except the Kaaba is the oldest, the first temple built on earth by Adam. Oddly enough, in the world's oldest city, but there was literally nothing there. So yeah, that makes no sense at all. So now, oddly enough, a couple of contradictions. Abraham traveled all the way from Israel to Mecca, and then he rebuilt, or maybe he built, the Kaaba. But then he also had to smash idols that had been put inside it, although it was built for Allah alone. So he had 359 idols to destroy. So which came first, the building of the Kaaba, the rebuilding, the smashing up of the idols? Who knows? Hagar ran
Also,
around in the, yeah, go on.
isn't there a hadith that mentions that actually Muhammad was the one who placed the stone there back when it was a pagan shrine, back when it was still pagan before Islam, right? JC, say something on that.
I'm not aware of a hadith that actually says something like that. And about the story of Abraham destroying the idols, I thought that actually supposed to happen when he was still with his father. So it's not meant to be about the Kaaba, but there could be other stories that say that it is the Kaaba. I'm not very familiar with this.
No,
Actually, you know what?
seriously, I remember there is a hadith that mentions that Muhammad was the one who placed the stone there before Islam, before he had the revelations, before anything. He was the one who placed the stone there back when it was still a pagan shrine.
Mm, yeah, no, sorry, I haven't actually read that one. I can't confirm, can neither confirm nor deny.
Actually, you know what? There's I can't think of it right now, but actually there's a one of the narratives in Islam, in one of the seerahs, is that Muhammad actually, he was actually in the Kaaba, and he had a stick, and he pointed a stick at the idols, and he would tell the idol, in the name of Allah, I rebuke you, or some story like that. I've covered it on the channel before. And then the idol would fall and smash itself on the ground after Muhammad pointed his stick at it. So yeah, so there you go. I mean, but I've shown it before. I'll find it again in the future. Oh, yes, very interesting. Yeah, in the setup. Go on.
Yeah, yes, this thing that I noticed the other day, and actually it made me laugh because, of course, it's weird. We have proof that Allah is real because in the Sirah it says that they actually dug into the foundations and they saw a stone that said, "I am Allah, the Lord of Bakka." Um, Interesting.
But no, to read the whole thing, I was told that Quraysh found in the corner a writing in Syriac. Now that's fascinating. They could not understand it until a Jew read it for them. It was as follows: I am Allah, the Lord of Bakka. I created it on the day I created heaven. So supposedly this was in Syriac, not in Arabic. Isn't that interesting? In the Sirah.
Yeah. Yeah, that whole myth about everything being in Arabic is probably as well quite a new thing because even in some tafsirs, you can see that they will say, "Oh, this thing is Syriac, that thing is other languages." So it happened much later when they tell to everybody, "Nope, this is all Arabic," and if you say otherwise, you are in trouble. So this doesn't surprise me.
Right. Okay, so yeah, back to where we were. So Mecca is supposedly the oldest. Oh, hold on. This guy is seriously. Let me just. Obviously, someone is very, very upset. I mean, you know, someone is very, very upset. Butt plug for Lloyd. I hear Yahweh likes virgins. I mean, we know that Muhammad liked shagging his son's wife. Which prophet shagged his son's wife? Well, Muhammad did. Which prophet shagged a 9-year-old minor? Muhammad did. Right? Muslims go on about Epstein, supposedly having illegal activities with girls who are 13 and 14, but Muhammad did it with a 9-year-old, and that's okay because it's okay when Muhammad's a pedophile. So, of course, here we go. These people are a little upset, JC. I think we're finding some very, very upset people. So if the mods would actually please take care of the trolls and rather than giving them a platform, that would be appreciated. So, yeah, which prophet got shagged by a group of men? Right? There's also that question. Of course, Mohomo, as we all know, the prophet Mohomo of Islam. Yeah, any comments from you guys before I move on?
Well, since since you mentioned that again, um, I wanted to make clear you made fun of that a couple of times, and people make fun of it, but it's a real thing, and it makes sense from their perspective, and it makes sense to an extent from a Manichaean perspective, and from a pagan Gnostic perspective, it makes very much sense because they believe that if you reproduce, you well they consider that sinful. They try to avoid having offspring because that they believe in the divine spark, right? So if you have children, uh, the divine sparks get trapped in a human body. So they want to avoid having children. So, from that perspective, homosexual intercourse makes sense and was very rampant in some of these sects precisely for that reason, because you don't risk, trapping new divine sparks in
Disturbing.
new human bodies.
That is actually quite disturbing. You know, so our friend here is obviously, someone is triggered. Someone is actually very triggered, as you can see. So yeah, someone is clearly highly triggered here. Very interesting.
The
Yeah.
other day, I saw from God Logic, he was talking to a Muslim, and he showed him one verse in the Quran. I need to find it that says, "And the messenger of Allah is in you." So obviously, it's supposed to be the Holy Spirit, but it says the messenger is in you. And God Logic asked the Muslim, "So is Muhammad in you?" And he said, "I hope not." So that was quite good. So this is what happens when you have a book that is talking about the Trinity and stuff, and then they start saying, "No, this is Muhammad." Then you have problems like the messenger is in you. And after reading some hadith, you don't want to accept that, certainly.
Yep. Let me get something. I just want to show something while you're here. Don't forget Muhammad's wife, Aisha. Since the Muslims are being triggered and manifesting in the chat, Aisha was Muhammad's 9-year-old wife that he was shagging. Right? Remember, it's bad that Epstein was shagging 14-year-olds. That's illegal. It's criminal. It's disgusting. Muhammad is shagging a 9-year-old. Oh, the perfect man, the perfect Muslim, the best example for all mankind. So yeah, maybe I detect no hypocrisy there, or maybe that was sarcasm. But she actually says here, Aisha said to the Messenger of Allah, "It is you who pretend, pardon me, to be a prophet from Allah." So she actually tells him he pretended to be a prophet of Allah.
And
You know,
and she is the mother of the believers. We should all follow her, and also question whether he might just be pretending to be a prophet.
yeah.
Yes.
And let's have a look at the perfect man. Let's have a look at some of the examples of this perfect man, because clearly the series, the MOONoTheism series, is upsetting people, which is great. Muhammad's 6-year-old wife scraped semen off his clothes with her fingernails. She writes here, and there's almost 30 of these that I found, okay? There's nearly 30. I think there's 28 of these. I used to wash the traces of semen from the clothes of Muhammad, and he used to go for prayers while traces of water were still on it. Narrated Aisha, I asked Aisha about the clothes that was soiled with semen, and she replied, I used to wash it off the clothes of Muhammad, and he would go for prayer in that clothing. I heard Sulaiman bin Yasar talking about the clothes soiled with semen. He said that she said I used to wash it off the clothes of Allah's messenger. I used to wash the semen off the clothes of the Prophet, and even then I used to notice one or more spots on his clothes. I used to scrape off the semen from the garment of the messenger. She even goes on, I used to scrape off the semen with my fingernails. Okay, I often scraped semen from the garment of Muhammad with my hand. Why is a 6-year-old scraping cum stains off the clothing of the perfect pedophile? Anybody?
Crickets.
I'm not here. I'm not here.
So that was just a small selection, just a few of the many that you can find if you bother to look, of the semen stained clothing of. So that yeah, it's pretty disgusting. It's pretty disgusting. Welcome to Islam. So let's move on. So no prophet or warner was sent to Arabia. Abraham and Ishmael supposedly went to Arabia. Now, Adam was 36 meters tall, or 90 feet, and he was supposedly the first Muslim in Mecca. But he built a very tiny Kaaba. The Kaaba is 12 meters tall at best, apparently, something like that. Adam was 90 feet tall, according to the Islamic legend. So he builds a Kaaba made for ants. And then Abraham went there with his son, and he rebuilt the Kaaba, and he called people to worship there. So now, why does the Quran say, and we had not given them any scriptures which they could study, and we had not sent to them before you, O Muhammad, any warner, but Adam was a prophet there, Abraham was a prophet there. 300 prophets are apparently buried around the Kaaba, according to Muslims.
Moses, of course, a big prophet in it, was of course a Muslim and a very important prophet in Islam.
So yeah, any comments from you, JC, before we go on?
Yeah, also Prophet Alexander the Great and everybody. Yeah, we see all of these things in the tradition, and it is very clear that they invent a story, they create plot holes, and they create other stories. They are saying whatever they think sounds good. They don't realize that by committing something like this to paper, someone is going to appear later and say, okay, this is a contradiction. So
Yep.
So a Roman pagan can be an Islamic prophet. It's very interesting, and again, it's very similar to Manichaeism, where they would just, take whatever important figure you have in your culture and claim, well, that's our prophet.
Yeah, didn't I think it's Shabir Ali? Didn't he say that
Yes,
Buddha was
Zoroaster,
a prophet of Allah and Socrates was a prophet of
Zoroaster,
Allah?
and who else was it? Alexander the Great.
Hmm.
Retarded. Seriously retarded. Yeah. So now Muhammad was the first prophet to the Arabs, except that up to 300 prophets apparently were in Arabia, buried around the Kaaba, for which we have exactly no proof, nothing whatsoever. But they make the claim between 70 and 300 prophets, so between 90 and 300 prophets are buried at the Kaaba. But Abraham and his son were there. They were both prophets. Weren't they prophets and warners? What about Adam, who is buried near the Kaaba? Adam, who is 36 meters or 90 feet tall, he's buried apparently near the Kaaba. Ishmael and his mother are buried literally within 2 meters of the Kaaba. So, yeah, it's just now you see here, Ishmael and his mother are supposedly buried right here inside the Hatam. This little moon circle here, this crescent moon with the stars, the suns here, and the kids, the children of the star and of the moon and the sun. Yeah, well, apparently Ishmael and his mom buried right here. So, yeah. So there you go. So moving on. Yeah, so this is where they're buried, but can Muslims give us proof? Absolutely, positively not. I want you to notice these are the lanterns, which are stars, and the half moon over here, the crescent moon. And this is where Ishmael and his mother are buried. According to Muslims, they've paved over all of it, and there are no artifacts at all. Consider Jerusalem versus Mecca, if you look at artifacts. Yeah. Adam does have multiple grave sites according to Islamic legend. Yeah. So let us move on. Right. Now, this is a Wikipedia article called Ancient Towns in Saudi Arabia. Right. And this is on Wikipedia. Now, that's fine. Wikipedia can have some terrible information, Wikipedia. However, when you look at the most ancient cities and towns in Arabia, what you'll find is this one, Qaryat al-Fao. Okay, this is a god that was from Yemen, and these people invaded, and they became very prominent. This is from that. Remember the religion, the group that we spoke of in the very beginning, those Yemenis that worshipped the moon god. They established the city. It still exists, and these people, we know, they go back 3,000 years in the historical record. And their city here still exists. Of course, the city is not 3,000 years old, but the people we know about. Alula, Madain Sali, Tema, Dumat al Jandal, and these places here. But notice, are there two cities that are missing, guys? Do you notice a couple of cities that should be here that are missing?
Yeah, there's a little place where I think Hagar went and found some water, and that city is not there.
Yeah, so there's a city called Makkah and a city called Medina that are absolutely missing from the list of oldest cities because there is no evidence for this being old cities. Yeah, so this article says there are 13 ancient towns that have been discovered in Saudi Arabia up to the present day. These include Qaryat al-Fao, the Al-Uqdud archaeological area, Hegra or Madain Sali, Juba, Tarut, Al-Shuwaitia, Taj, Tema, and Durat al-Jandal. But Makkah, the mother of all cities, is absent from the list. Yet these all places are well attested historically, but not Mecca somehow. Isn't that a little bit odd? Isn't that just a little odd?
It's sus. But with all of these things with Mecca, what I find interesting is that even non-Islamic scholars, they know full well that Mecca wasn't there. But instead of actually picking that fight and say, okay, let's just prove that Mecca was not there since the time of Abraham and then Islam collapses. Instead of doing that, they say, well, but in the 7th century, Mecca was there because the Islamic traditions, but it was probably smaller. And it's like, no, what are you doing? Their traditions say that because Islam is linked to the city, that it was there 2,000 years, well, 4,000 years prior. It's like, why are you not zeroing in on that to prove that the city was not there during the time of Abraham. And instead of that, they ignore all of that and they say, well, in the 7th century, it was possibly around, but very small. It's almost like they are cowards and they don't want to pick this fight.
Yep. And then Hagar walks 1,200 kilometers all the way from Mecca up here, apparently. Then she goes to Egypt to go find Ishmael a wife, right? And his sons, Isaac and Ishmael, buried him in the cave of Machpelah in the field of Ephron, the son of Zohar the Hittite, which is before Mamre. Now, that would tell us that Ishmael is probably somewhere close enough to get there, but maybe not 1,200 kilometers away. Who knows, right? Mamre is Hebron, right? That's in Hebron. That's just west here of the Dead Sea. When Abram died in Hebron, Ishmael apparently walked 1,200 kilometers for the funeral and back. How did he even know about the death of his father, right? We don't have any information about that. Then Ibn Kathir writes, Abraham often rode upon the Burak to Mecca, coming suddenly to his son and then returning, and Allah knows best. So Burak Airways. Ibn Ishaq's tradition about Abraham riding on Burak to Mecca where he visits Ishmael is found 3 times in the sources. Abraham was accustomed to taking day trips. He would go for one day, leave in the morning, play with a kid, come back at night. So he would take day trips to Mecca to check up on Hagar and his son. And on one of these visits, he apparently takes Ishmael to the sacrifice. Yeah. So, yeah, any thoughts, guys, before I go on?
Well, trying to fix this and just using the Burak is Deus ex machina. Is when you cannot, you see that something is absolutely silly, and then you say, well, it was the magical, mystical flying beast that made it happen. Trust me, bro. It's very lazy writing.
Yep. No, there's a lot of inconsistencies, precisely because that is their tactic. Because when they speak to people in the north, they say, "Oh yeah, it's Jerusalem. That's really important." Blah blah blah. When they speak to people in the south, they say, "Oh no, it's your Mecca. That's really important." And they always adjust it depending on what people they talk to, and they always when they're addressing Jews, then it's the Jewish prophet. When they're addressing Romans, then then it's Alexander the Great, or whatever. They always adjust it for whatever audience they have, and that's why you get all these inconsistencies.
Right. Interesting. Now, oddly enough, the earliest mention of Burak, right? The earliest dateable mention, the earliest mention of the Burak that we can actually date is by a poet called Ajaj, right? He died in the year 97 AH after the Hijrah, or the year 715. This is roughly a century, right? When did Muhammad die? So he's 630, right? He dies, something like that. So now we're looking at nearly a century after Muhammad dies, we get the very first mention of the Burak. So there's no mentions prior. And he mentions the Burak in connection with Abraham. So we have a record from a poet. Now, right? Also, this is the cave of the patriarchs. This is where Abraham is supposedly buried, I believe, right? So now, this is a picture here of Muhammad, another picture of Muhammad before pictures became haram, right? Yeah, Muhammad dies at 632, yeah, and 715. So you're looking at nearly a century after. So this is Muhammad sitting here reading, but these images look very, as you say, the Buddhist style, maybe the Manichaean style. What do you think, Emmanuel? And this is actually very Persian as well. You see this horse here. This is a horse with a face of a woman, and you've got Muhammad with a turban. This is a very Shia style turban. This is not even Sunni style, and these are very Indian sort of style. This is very influenced by India. And of course, so yeah, and there's the Burak, the horse with a woman's face, right? So Al-Borak, or Borak, is a mule, elephant, angel, camel, woman, peacock, horse, according to the sources.
Okay. Yeah, the face is very interesting. Also, this is almost Indian, really. You said it.
Yep.
Look at the whatever you call it. This
Dots, yeah.
isn't
This is the
Islamic.
dot here. Yeah,
Um, yeah.
yeah. So the burak was a mule, elephant, angel, camel, woman, peacock, horse. True story.
Okay. Yeah.
So this is how Muhammad traveled from Mecca to Al-Aqsa Mosque and to the skies by means of the Miraj, the ladder. The Sulam is also stated in narrations. Okay, so in some stories he uses a ladder, in others he uses this mule, peacock, whatever the heck, right? And in other Islamic stories, he actually travels on the wings of Gabriel. But obviously, the most popular one was the one on the mule, elephant, angel, camel, woman, peacock, horse. That became the most popular one, and that's the one that now everyone talks about. So most of these narrations from Muhammad himself state that he descended from Burak in the Beit al-Maqdis, prayed in the mosque. The mosque wasn't built till about 90 years after Muhammad died. Not sure how he prayed in a mosque that wasn't in Jerusalem until nearly a century after he died. But
Allah knows best.
Allah knows. Any comment from you, JC, while we're on this story?
Well, about Al-Aqsa, there are now more and more people, even in Saudi Arabia, saying Al-Aqsa has nothing to do with Jerusalem. Al-Aqsa is, or it was supposed to be between Mecca and Taif, a little place right there. So you are having now more and more people saying that because they know that people now know that Al-Aqsa was not there during the time of the night journey. But just earlier today, I saw even Yasser Qadi saying again that, yeah, Al-Aqsa right there in Jerusalem. So for pretty much 1400 years, they have been telling to pretty much everyone Al-Aqsa is in Jerusalem. Now that we say it wasn't there, they're trying to change the narrative in front of our eyes. Very, very
Yeah, in real
interesting.
time, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So, and according to the stories are fascinating, the different versions of the story, right? So he prays in the mosque, then he goes to the skies with the angel Gabriel. In other stories, it's a different angel. In some stories, it's two angels. So the stories are never quite the same. It's a different story depending who you read. And then Gabriel himself, or with two other angels, brings the Burak on the night of the Isra. And when Muhammad mounted it, it was disobedient. It wouldn't let Muhammad mount it. So in the story, Gabriel hits it in the face, which is what you do with a horse, woman, peacock, mule, donkey, elephant, flying thing. You punch it in the face. So Burak will carry Mo on the judgment day, and Burak transported other prophets as well. So Ibrahim, when he wanted to carry Hagar and Ishmael to Mecca, some narration said it was his conveyance on all his travels. Remember, this whole story started with a poem by Ajaj, who lived nearly a century after Muhammad. Its descriptions are conflicting and very unclear. So during ascent, its hands became smaller than its feet. So its feet would get bigger as it went up because it was climbing, you see. And then during descent, the feet became smaller, which keeps the person on its back straight. So it's a huge mount with furry mane and a white skin. It has a skin with the best color amongst all animals. It's a peacock with
Did you
beautiful
say
colors.
white skin?
White.
You said white skin, but look at the painting; it's portrayed black.
Are you trying to confuse the audience with the facts, Emmanuel?
I'm sorry. There were no inconsistencies anywhere here. Allah knows best.
Yeah, no, Allah knows best. And its face was similar to a human's, and it could hear and understand like a human. So it's a talking horse. Maybe it was Donkey from Shrek.
I feel
Okay, so
sorry
since
for
you, oh, okay, go ahead.
Sorry?
I feel sorry for the artist. I think at one point they have to tell that guy, okay, Rashid, so you need to paint a mule, elephant, angel, camel, woman, peacock, horse. Go for it. It's like, poor guy.
Oh, shit. I don't know, man. Whoever comes up with this stuff. So there's Islamic mystical literature that talks about these images, right? So
I just wanted to mention something real fast. I spoke with some Muslims the other day, and they were attacking the Bible, and they were taking a passage from the Bible where it mentions a talking donkey, and they thought this was so funny. They couldn't stop laughing, and I was like, kind of hypocritical. I mean, they have their own talking donkey. Who even flies? The one in the Bible doesn't fly.
exactly. So they speak of, so in Islamic literature, these images abound, actually. They go way back. They speak of 5 creatures that sit in 5 trees in the first white sphere: the lion, the borak, the white falcon, the royal phoenix, the duldul, who is the sign of godliness. They all sit on the top of 5 trees. Now remember, the duldul sits on top of a tree. We're going to find out what the duldul is in a minute, but understand the duldul is a tree, sits in trees, lives in trees, climbs trees, okay? Singing praise, happiness, honor, and glory from the leaves, all on heaven and earth, glorify God, the most holy King, the powerful and wise. And the borak comes from the light of Muhammad. So Muhammad created the borak. You see, it's a creation of Muhammad. It's from his glory and essence. And the duldul comes from the light of Ali, and the lion comes from the light of Fatima, and the white falcon from the light of Hassan, and the royal phoenix. Sorry, I fell asleep. Okay, so sorry, let me just get back on. On the 5 trees of paradise, right? These 5 trees of paradise in Islamic mystical literature, we can look at the Gospel of Thomas 19, which is a Gnostic gospel. And we can also look in Manichaean literature. These ideas are Manichaean ideas. These are Manichaean motifs. So in the text, the legendary trees of paradise are called tuba trees. Tuba means happiness. An eagle is perched on the trees of knowledge in paradise, according to the secret book of John, or the Apocryphon of John, which we read, remember, Emmanuel? So
Yeah, the secret book of John was actually one of the main books, other than their own revelations, that the Christian Gnostic sect that I grew up in, based their faith on.
right. So, okay, so even in Hinduism, they have a concept of a flying white donkey horse called Uchchaishravavas. Okay, thanks, man. Not sure how to describe that, but there you go.
That explains why it's an Indian horse with an Indian woman's face.
Miguel says his brain hurts from listening to these stories. Dude, think about me having to read this stuff. Yeah, Jibril gave it Quran 434 for being disobedient. As oh my god, yeah. So where was that from? Oh my gosh. Yeah, as Oa tells us, Allah knows BS. That should become the official motto. But notice you've got Manichaean literature influencing Islam, and in Islamic tradition, okay, the borak is the winged horse on which the Prophet Muhammad rode on his night journey, and the duldul is Muhammad's white mule. A white mule. I'd like to know, how does the white mule get on top of a tree? JC, do you have a lot of tree mules in Chihuahua, Guadalupe, Guadalajara, in the salt and Bitcoin mines in Mexico?
No, I mean I have seen the pictures of goats that actually these goats that actually climb trees, but that's weird enough, and they're real. We have pictures; they exist. But a mule, I think, is probably a little bit too big.
Yeah, I know. I'm gonna. Maybe it was a very small mule that liked trees. Maybe it was like a tree mule. A tornado did it. Yeah, a tornado. So, but notice also in Jabal al-Lawth, we'll come to this place as well, because this also links. Jabal al-Lawth links to the Yemeni tribes again that we spoke of, that worship the moon god Shin, right? The Babylonian religion. They were 135 k's northeast of Sanna, and they speak here of the Darb al-Sabi, the Sabis, and Muhammad is supposed to be a Sabi, a Sabaean, the people of the book. But these were moon worshippers, as we will discover, and they come from the place where Abraham supposedly comes from, Haran, and the Bible ascribes them as being people of the book. They're absolutely not Christians. These are pagans. And they speak of Barakish, the Sabis near Barakish, Barak, right? A place. And of course, they speak of, and this place is holy, and it's just like the Meccan Haram. So now you've got people that have the Barak, Wasabis, who were influenced by a Yemeni religion, and their holy place is just like the Haram. Isn't that fascinating? So yeah, JC.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
the closest I can get.
Yeah, these are mountain goats. The mountain goats can do that. They're amazing. Yeah, but a donkey can't do that.
So
surprisingly,
Scrunchy Cool, it's a goat.
These goats grow on the tree.
So this can prove Islam is not from Central Arabia, but Central Asia, Iran, exposed to Zoroaster, Buddhism, Jews, Christian, Hinduism, and many more. And yeah, there's definitely some truth to that. Definitely some truth to that. Yeah, and also notice if you go to Jewish mystical literature, they speak of Barak El, okay? Barak of El being Yahweh, the God, right? So the Barak, which is the lightning of God, okay? The Barak, right? And then it also mentions the appearance is like that of lightning, so it's very fast. That's how it can get like boom to Mecca real quick. And then see 1 Enoch 6:7. So now you've got a reference to 1 Enoch, which is filled with mystical ideas that were taken by the Manichaeans, right, Emmanuel?
Now, I just wanted to say, Muslims always told me that that no planes and no birds and nothing flies near Mecca for some weird reason. Because because it's the North Pole or something, right? And they say the weirdest thing, but this is a thing. They say that planes and birds and presumably donkeys cannot fly near Mecca. That's a thing.
Okay, well, that's great. Yeah, I'm pretty sure nothing. I mean, the Mecca story doesn't fly for sure. And they speak also of the idea of Barak El, right? The whole idea of the Barak within the Jewish law, though, also comes from you can look at the Qumran Book of Giants, which is a Manichaean book. So basically, these other groups have taken Jewish folklore, Jewish myths and legends, combined it into their legends. These are Gnostic groups. So now you've got the Qumran Book of Giants, which is also influenced by Manichaeism. Okay, that was one of the goats that ate the Quran, yes. And so in Jewish law, in Manichaean cosmogony, studies in the Book of Giants traditions. So now you've got from Jewish law into Manichaeism into Islam. Fascinating stuff.
Maybe that explains why they claim that Abraham is so big. Right? Maybe he's one of those
child. Yeah, we have to go to the end of the first, beginning of the 2nd century to Persia. And we have to look at the religion of a man called Al-Chasai, who received a book from an angel. An angel sent him down a book from heaven. This happens between 95 and 117 AD. So he gets a book from an angel. And the book.
Wait, but you're not talking about money, because money is pretty much the same time and pretty much the same story. They just keep recycling their stories and their prophets. Kind of weird.
So what happens is, so Al-Chasai creates a religion that is very influential, incredibly influential, actually, also in this region. It becomes a problem, and Mani's father was a member of that religion, and then Mani grew up in that religion and left it and formed his own one.
Yeah, but the story of Mani itself is the same story. It just took the story from his tribe and put himself in the place of the prophet. And then a few hundred years later, Muhammad presumably did the same thing again. They don't even come up with anything new. They just keep recycling the same stories.
Yeah, exactly.
And of course, Mani was the seal of the prophet. They're all the seal of. For some reason, all these prophets are all the seal of the prophet. Mani was known prominently as the seal of the prophet, the final prophet. Yet all of them are the final prophet for some reason.
Seal of the prophet. Yeah, and then finally, there's a couple of things here. You've got also, when you look at, if you go through, so basically a lot of the stuff that we're looking at here comes from Jewish mythology, right? You've got the divine presence, the glory of the heavenly height said to me, there are 7 great, beautiful, awesome, wonderful, and honored princes over the 7 heavens. I wonder where Muhammad got the 7 heavens. Namely, Michael, Jibril, Satkil, Sahakil, Baradil, and Burakil or Barakil, and Sidriel. Yeah, fascinating. And again, this goes into Enoch, and then you start to see where all of these odd ideas come from. And then speak of go on.
The number 7 is actually very significant, even in Islam. Right? You how do you call this? You circle the Kaaba 7 times, right? And there are 7 heavens, and there are, and that's probably why, because there are 7 planets. Of course, there actually now there how many planets? They changed it. They keep changing it. But back then they only knew 7 planets, right? So to them there were 7 planets in the solar system. So presumably that's why you do 7 circles around the Kaaba, and if you look from above, it mimics the solar system, the rotation.
Yeah, we'll look into that. We'll definitely we'll cover that too. Yeah, we definitely will speak of that. That's part of the talk as well, but not today. But notice the word Burak, or the Barak as it is in the Hebrew. He said Barak Barkai, and Rabbi Akiba said Allah Barkai, which so the Burak. So within the Hebrew context, it means the light has risen. You see, it was a beautiful light. The animal was radiant and had beautiful colors. It was like the light has risen. You see, the light has risen. The flying donkey has risen up. And it became the light at Hebron. You see, the light rose at Hebron. You see, Abraham and the Burak, so the whole association is the Burak and Abraham. And here we have the Jews talking about Abraham being the Burak. Abraham is the light that rose at Hebron. You see, and have we to imitate Abraham? And said the Rabbah, the Tanah learns from Abraham. Why shall we not? And Abraham rose up early in the morning. So Abraham flew early. You see, whatever. They're just taking these ideas, corrupting them, and claiming the name Burak, and have forgotten entirely what it's about. But let's have a look here at the Arda Viraf and the night journey with Sarosh. Some of you will have seen this before, but here we go. This is these are 2 Persian artifacts. This one is Islamic. Looks very Indian and Zoroastrian, very Persian. Here you've got the woman, horse, mule, donkey, elephant, pig, I don't know, whatever. And here you've got a very popular motif from Persia, right?
I just noticed, I mean, the Burak has a woman's face, right? So how come she's not covering her face?
Are you trying to confuse us with the facts again, Emmanuel? JC, answer this man. Give him an answer. I want a clear answer here.
Je ne sais pas.
Je ne sais pas pourquoi. Okay, fine. There you go. So thank you, audience. I hope that satisfies. Emmanuel, I hope that works for you. Yeah. So there we go. So now you have an answer. So now you've got this idea and this idea, but they seem kind of similar. Now I can tell you that Islam didn't come before these Zoroastrian, the Persians. Let's have a look. So in the book, the Arda Viraz Namaj or Namag, in Zoroastrianism, you have a winged horse-like creature with a human head. And in Zoroastrianism, in the Arda Viraf, right? In the Zoroastrian religion, Arda Viraf made a night journey to heaven under the guidance of the angel Sarosh. Muhammad made a night journey to heaven under the guidance of the angel Gibberish. And see, this is found in an old Pahlavi book known as the Book of Arda Viraf. And the story describes the journey of a saintly priest who goes into a trance. You see, well, because in the hadiths, Muhammad goes into a trance and his spirit went to heaven. And then in some hadiths, his body went to heaven. But Aisha says, no, he stayed the whole night. The bed was warm. He stayed the entire night. I saw him. His soul must have gone. So he goes into a trance and his spirit goes up to heavens under the guidance of Sarosh. He passes from one heaven to another, and he gets in the presence of Ormazd, the great deity of the whole universe. Does this sound familiar, guys?
Very.
So then Arda saw the heavens and how happy its inhabitants were. Ormazd told him to return to earth as his messenger to tell people everything that he saw and heard. And Ormazd commanded that his followers must pray 5 times a day.
Wait. Oh, I got so confused along the way. I started thinking you were talking about Islam, but you're not.
What do you mean Islam? Do Muslims pray 5 times a day? Did they
No. And this whole story totally doesn't appear in Islam. No.
JC, help me out here.
I think I read the book of Art of Iraq a really long time ago, so I can't remember it very well. I was just doing a search because I thought there was a mention of the wall of Alexander the Great somewhere in those traditions, but I cannot find it. So that's probably a no. But the way that they describe the heavens, I think it says very similar things, like there is like a bridge and people have to cross and some people fall off. It says that
Yep.
God is like behind something, like behind a tree or behind a veil. There is these parallels that they seem to have been copied in Islam. They seem to actually come from that book. At least the parallels are really quite striking.
Yeah. So for the audience, I want you, so do yourself a favor. This is from Dr. Shabir Ali. Does Muslim prayer come from Zoroastrianism? Take a time, take a moment, give it a listen. You might be fascinated to learn that maybe he doesn't say hell no. It's like, well, Allah works in mysterious ways. Allah could have worked through a pagan, who actually was a follower of Allah, and therefore, whatever, man.
Well, if Alexander the Great can be a prophet of Allah, then certainly Zoroaster can be.
Yeah, so why do Muslims say like, oh, but Christianity comes from the sun worship, and it's like, yeah, but of course, pagans are all followers of Allah,
Yeah,
right?
yes. Christianity comes from the sun worship, but not SUN though.
Yeah, I know, but yeah, it doesn't. Whatever, just hypocrisy is how it works. Yeah. Actually, so Akra says, in many Turkic and Mongol shamanic traditions, the shaman performs a night journey via horse to the upper or lower worlds to communicate with spirits or gods. I'd say, yeah. Yep. So there's a little bit going on here that yeah. Okay, now the Battle of Badr. I just want to mention, actually, let's skip this. Okay, but notice the term Barak, right? Barack Obama. Barak is lightning flash. The name occurs in Sabaean. Oh, in Sabaean. Oh my God, the Sabi, the Sabaeans, the Sabi, the aren't they also people of the book? Except they are actual moon worshippers. Oh, good grief! What an overlap! And they come from Palmyra, Palmyrene Barak, and you have Raman Berku, and Barak was the son of Abnom of Kadesh. Okay, and of course this goes on to Deborah and Barak, right? So anyway, right. So let's skip over that. Abraham built the Kaaba, right? Actually, no. Which mosque? Now this is interesting, right? Now, I know I made a mistake here with this, but this is the mosque in Jerusalem, right? Narrated Abu Dawud. I said, "O Allah's Messenger, which mosque was built first?" And he replied, "Al Masjid Al Haram." And I asked, which was built next? And he replied, Al Masjid Al Aqsa in Jerusalem. And I asked, what was the period in between them? And Muhammad said 40 years. So the first mosque that was built is the one in Mecca. And the second mosque that was built is the one in Jerusalem that's sitting on the Temple Mount. And the distance, the time between them is 40 years. So according to the 7th century Muhammad, the Kaaba is 40 years older than the Masjid al-Aqsa. Are we starting to, maybe there's a little bit of a problem here. Sorry, there's going to be a mistake in my stuff here, but here's Christianity, right? This is the Temple of Jerusalem. And so this is the temple of, and here in minus, which is built in King Solomon's time at 900 BC. So the Kaaba is built here, and then the masjid in Jerusalem is built 40 years later at roughly before 900 BC. So somehow I don't know, someone worked the maths out for me. Islam starts here in roughly 610. Abraham is born and dies here. Abraham built the Kaaba. Remember, Abraham fixed the Kaaba. Abraham built the Kaaba, but the Kaaba was built here just before the Temple of Solomon. But Abraham built it here. So Abraham built the Kaaba here, except it was built here. And then the temple in Jerusalem was built 40 years later, except it wasn't in Jerusalem until 90 years after Muhammad, or 60 years after Muhammad died. Are we detecting bullshit here, guys?
Yeah, it looks like people were just making the story. Basically, every man would say something different, and then everything is recorded, and nothing makes sense. Also, Abraham rebuilt the Kaaba, so it's actually Adam who built it. So if that is interpreted as Adam, he's not even in this timeline. Would have been Adam building it first. If they wanted to go with the story, they should have said that Abraham went to Mecca, built the Kaaba, and then went back to Jerusalem, and then he built the first temple. That would be the only thing to actually make it work. But the one thing that is true in here is that the Masjid al-Haram was built before the Masjid al-Aqsa. The Masjid al-Haram was built in the year 697, and the Masjid al-Aqsa was built around the year 709. So it was built about 10 years before. And like you said, many decades after the supposed night journey.
So yeah, we've got so someone's talking a bunch of poo-poo here on this particular story.
So,
Emmanuel, I see you looking
yeah,
at me.
yeah. So Muhammad flew on his flying donkey to a mosque that wasn't even built yet. But it's also contradicting, you know. But then they say no, it was built back then, but it wasn't built yet. And when exactly did Muhammad even live? This makes no sense. There are so many discrepancies. There's like discrepancies of a couple of thousand years here, you know.
Yeah, this story. Yeah, there's a little problem here, but as Ower told us, Allah knows BS. I think there's our
Yes,
answer.
and it's very important that you don't question. That's also what I was always told in the Christian Gnostic sect I grew up in. You must not question. You must not even have doubt in your mind. They had the same contradictions. You know, all these pagan heresies and all these Gnostic groups. They have so many contradictions. You could talk about all these contradictions for years. You could talk about them, and you still wouldn't be able to cover them all. But that's also why they emphasize, they always do, and Muslims do as well. You must not question. You must not even have doubt in your mind. If you just have doubt in your mind, or if you're just questioning in your mind, it already shows that Satan is corrupting you, and
Right.
it already shows that you don't have enough faith, and they did too. They use coercive measures to get you back on track. They use rather coercive measures. That's the only thing they can do, because they cannot use logic. The logic falls apart. You cannot have a rational discourse with them.
Of course not,
The
because
only way they can keep people in line is using force.
right. And in the Reliance of the Traveler, the Umdat al-Salik, they speak of quite a bit of doubt. You need to remove the doubt. The student must acquire the belief. And if someone has doubts, then a scholar needs to take him aside, okay? And he needs to learn the theologian's proofs. And they speak of, so just so you know, things that are forbidden in Islam is sorcery, philosophy, magic, astrology, the sign, and anything that is a means to create doubts. And then, of course, and there was something I needed to find out about doubt. There's something I need to find. Darn it. I need to find this. There's a mention here. So you just mentioned that people are required to believe in the cult with absolute conviction, no question. So it says the basic obligation of Islam is to believe in everything with absolute conviction, free of any doubt, and you are not obliged to learn evidence. That's exactly what your cult taught as well. When you think about it, Emmanuel.
Yeah,
That's exactly
because it's not about evidence, and it doesn't matter if there are factual contradictions. They basically negate and reject all of that anyway. What they say is true, and that's it. And you have to remove all the doubt in your mind.
Yeah. So in the Sharia, just believe. Don't question. Don't think. Just believe. No doubt. So there you go. So Allah knows BS. Remember that. So this story is completely false. Chronologically, this cannot be proven. This is clearly false. There's no way that can prove this history. There's absolutely no way that that can be done. Right? So Abraham lives here, but he built the Kaaba that was built 1,000 years after he lived. Right? So anyway, moving on. So yeah, this story makes no sense whatsoever. Okay, so now let's look at some old maps. Okay, let's look at some old maps. Here you've got some very old maps. Old maps were not yet Googlified, right? All these maps used different coordinate systems, and it's taken a long time for scholars to figure out the coordinates on these maps. And of course, they're not to scale. They were badly drawn. There's lots of issues, right? Oh my God, Daniel Hakikashu say first people have a low IQ, so they never dare to question Islam. That is, yeah, no, facts irrelevant. So anyway, so the fact is that coordinate systems were not what we have today, okay? Ethiopia was anything, Ethiopia sub Egypto. Ethiopia was considered anything below Egypt. Anything under Egypt was called Ethiopia. And look here, Sabei, right? Where Mecca is supposed to be, there's a place called Sabei on this ancient map. You've got Ethiopia sub Egypto, Ethiopia below Egypt. And where Mecca is, you have the Sabei, the Sabaeans, these moon-worshipping Sabaeans. You don't see Mecca, you don't see Muslims. And notice above here, the Saraceni, the Saracens are up north. Any thoughts, guys?
I will say that there are lots of clues in their traditions. A very important one that everybody ignores is that Yathrib was renamed to Medina, and they say this is because of the traditions. But that happened with Mecca. There would have been a tiny village in there, maybe that one that you have on the map. We have, according to their traditions, they changed the name of one city. When we look at the maps, no one has ever heard of a place called Mecca. So that should tell us that maybe there was a tiny village and then it got renamed because they are building a narrative. So it is established. They renamed one city. No, they actually had to rename two. Either that or Mecca was not there at all. It was only desert and then they created it. I think it's more likely that there was a tiny little speck of dust right there we call a village. And then they rebranded it and said, okay, we have Mecca now.
Yeah, and then potentially the Sabaeans are the original Muslims. I mean, there's certainly a chance of that, I think. So let's continue here.
Let me get this straight. This map is from the 15th century,
I think so.
and there is no
yeah.
Mecca.
There's no Mecca, apparently not.
In the 15th century, Mecca was not deemed important enough to appear on this map of Arabia.
No, of course not.
Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, they have all of these places, but not Mecca and Medina, the two most important, oldest cities in the world. Shocking.
That map should have added Mecca, by the way, because there is a mermaid. So they were aware of mythical creatures. So they could have actually added the mythical Mecca as well. Mm-hmm.
Yep. And yes, there is a Yasin chapter named after the moon god. We'll speak about all of this. Art Butler says, make this make sense. Yeah, I know. We're trying to just figure out what the hell's going on here. Okay, so let's talk about Makoraba. Now, of course, Muslims make the claim that Makoraba is a reference by Ptolemy from the 2nd century to Mecca. Okay, so Makoraba, all we have is this one coordinate, 73 degrees, 20 minutes, 22 seconds. Okay, and this is in Ptolemy, geography. Okay, book 6, paragraph 7 or whatever. Now, Makoraba, according to Ptolemy, is a city in northwestern Arabia Felix, right? Arabia Deserta is southern Syria to the northern Hejaz, right? Arabia Felix is the southern part of the Arabian Peninsula. This is the green Mecca, right? This is the green part of Arabia. So hold on. Let me just have a look at... I've shown this before. I will show it again. But let's just see if we can find... This is Al-Mahabisha. This is not the best picture at all, but it is lush and green in this part of the world. It's actually beautifully lush. It actually has mountains. But we'll get to those. We'll get to those pictures in a bit. Now, Makoraba, according to Ptolemy, right, sits in the south part, right? So what you've got here is an incense-producing part of Yemen, right, and Oman, southern Saudi Arabia, including Najran, just across the border of Yemen into Arabia, which was a well-known pilgrimage site for Christians of the day, but also drew a lot of heretics. So Claudius Ptolemy's 2nd century geography places the name Makoraba in the west of the Arabian Peninsula. So with the lack of historical evidence for Makkah, Muslim apologists claim it is Mecca, right? So Makoraba became their go-to because they found a reference to a word that is similar to Mecca, but Makoraba, Mukaribba, so they claim, no, that's Mecca. Ptolemeus Claudius, or Ptolemy, lived from 90 to 168 AD. He was a Greek writer. He wrote the Guide to Drawing the Earth, which listed latitude and longitude for cities, mountains, and other geographical features known in his day. You can learn more by looking at Dan Gibson, The Location of Mecca in Ptolemy's Geography. It's a great paper. I've read it. And Ian D. Morris, Mecca and Makoraba. He's from University of Amsterdam. Also an excellent paper. I'd highly recommend it. So notice here, now his myriad sources, actually, let me just go back here. Now, his myriad sources, of course, included, of course, Ptolemy, in a chapter arguing that Kush is southern Africa below Egypt, right, was the ancestor of the Saracens. Now you're saying that the Saracens actually came from Africa, from the west. Remember we spoke of these Africans in Ethiopia that were colonized by these Yemenis that invaded, controlled that region, and eventually they went back over. When the Yemenis weakened, the Ethiopians went over and invaded. Right, that was the kingdom of Aksum. That was at that time the 4th most powerful kingdom in the world. Right, so they're speaking of a guy called Bochart, and he's going to be important. So he says that Kush was the ancestor of the Saracens, and we saw the Saracens just north of where Mecca is supposed to be. Right, Bochart gave an account of Arabian geography, and he correctly identified the location of the Hejaz, and he named some of the towns in the Hejaz, including Mecca. And he said in his notes, in Ptolemy is Makoraba. It is Bochart who made the claim that Makoraba is Mecca, and that this was the claim of Ptolemy, that Ptolemy was referring to the city of Mecca. Ptolemy was referring to Makoraba, right? Ptolemy was referring to Makoraba, and of course Bochart said that this is Mecca. This was a claim made by Bochart, not a claim made by Ptolemy. And he says here, he's got Hebrew, and he says Mecca Rabba, or Great Mecca. Now, this mentioned by a man called Bochart here is the very first recorded instance in history where Makoraba is identified with Mecca. It is not by Ptolemy. Right? Any comment before I go on? This is going to be very important. Kush, I think, is modern-day Sudan. Yeah, I think so. Any comments before I go on, guys?
Just about Kush, I think, well, my ancient history is not really great, but I think there were 2 places called Kush, one being in Africa, but the other one being kind of like the region of Iraq,
The Hindu Kush.
if I remember correctly.
So
Yeah.
the kingdom of Kush was south of Egypt, primarily in what is today modern-day Sudan. Yeah. So the Kushite region. So if we go into the Kushite region here, this is, now notice that whole section. Remember, Saracenes were here, and this is the Kushite region. And then below that is Ethiopia, as you get into Ethiopia down here. So yeah, so now we're looking at this whole area here, right? Now, what's important, so Bochart is the first one to mention that Makoraba is Mecca. This was not a claim made by Ptolemy. Ptolemy mentioned Makoraba, right? Very important. So the first identification of Makoraba as Mecca is traced to Samuel Bochart in his book Sacred Geography from 1646. Not from Ptolemy in the 2nd century, but 1646. And also, there has never been a satisfactory explanation to explain the difference between the 2 names, Makkah and Makoraba, right? The word Makoraba is based on the southern Semitic root Makoraba, Makrib, meaning temple or sanctuary, but also altar, right? Makrib. Bochar used the root Makat Rabach for Great Mecca. However, this is completely wrong for the Arabic language. It is not Arabic. It might work in Ethiopian, it might work in Southern Arabian. It is not Arabic. So Bochart made a serious error here. Anything before I go on, guys?
I will just add that if Ptolemy mentioned one city, and now we have two, we have Mecca and Makoraba. It's like quite simple. Let's actually find which one has artifacts going back to the time of Ptolemy, and then we know which city was actually in there.
One
And one of
did
them
have
that's
artifacts going back to the time of Ptolemy and before, but it got bombed by the Saudis with an F-16.
it happens. Honest mistakes.
These things happen, yeah. When the Saudis just accidentally bomb a museum that happens to have 15,000 of pieces of art that might give Islamic historians a very hard time. So HDO, Dictionary of Arabic and Allied Loanwords. Ooh, Arabic loanwords, foreign words in the Quran. Oh my God. Right. Words from Spanish, Portuguese, Catalan, Galician, and kindred dialects. Oh my, I thought it was pure Arabic, but okay. Thank you, Federico Corriente. Apparently, it's an abridgment of the Sar Makrab, Mukrab, Mikrab, 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 Mikrab. This would be a prayer niche, okay? Mikrab. Let's quickly have a look. In Islam, a mikrab became a prayer niche. Let's have a quick look here. See, mikrab, prayer niche. These are prayer niches. That is a prayer niche right there. That's a prayer niche, right? You've seen these before. These are prayer niches. You've seen all of these prayer niches. That's a mikrab. But so Sar, I'm not sure what that is. Saraceni, I don't know, whatever. But so this is from the Ge'ez. This is from the Ethiopic. Okay, so Makrab, sanctuary, from the Ge'ez, the Makrab. So it's taken from Ethiopian. Oddly enough, the word Makrab comes from Ethiopian to judge from the Latinized form Makoraba in Claudio Ptolomeo. So the term Makoraba comes through the Ge'ez, Makrab, and then goes to whatever this language is here. South Arabian, I think it means, South Arabian, right? So this is Yemeni dialect, Makrab, right? Let's continue. So Makoraba, scientists have eventually figured out where it actually was. They've actually found out where Ptolemy was actually referring to, given Ptolemy's coordinates, right? So Makoraba is from KRB, Karab, okay? Is Al-Mahabisha in Yemen. It's actually Al-Mahabisha in Yemen. So if we adjust Ptolemy's coordinates, this will correctly place the towns and rivers in South Arabia on a modern map. However, towns that were previously given as the locations of Makkah are discovered to be located elsewhere. So here are Ptolemy's original locations overlaid on a modern map, and Makkah and Makoraba are in red. Okay, sorry, my maps are off, okay? So on Ptolemy's map, if you use the Ptolemy's coordinate system, it doesn't work because it needs to be adjusted for modern, because Ptolemy's map is also not to scale, it's not in sync, and so it needs to be adjusted, and they figured out how it is. It's Amharic. Thank you very much. Okay, so there are no, so sorry, this actually Makoraba is down here, okay? It's actually down here. Now, there are no Meccan archaeological artifacts until the 8th century AD or later. The first mention of Makkah is the Byzantine Arab Chronicle in 741 AD, which places it in Mesopotamia, right? That would be Iraq. The first time that Mecca is listed on a map of the Middle East is 900 AD, and Mecca, the mother of cities, did not exist in the early 7th century. Now, Makoraba is located 720 kilometers south of Mecca, right? This is Al-Mahabisha. This is Mecca up here. This is what Al-Mahabisha looks like. So Ptolemy's Makoraba is actually here. This is what it looks like. It is green. It has caves. It has hills. It has mountains. It is lush. It has growth. It has water. It has rivers. Guys, your thoughts?
It has everything but no Burak. That's the only thing missing.
Everything but the Burak. I remember that song, Step Off the Train, couldn't find the Burak again, had to take the train. I remember that song, yeah, by Everything But the Burak, right?
Indeed.
Do
So
I need to
yeah,
pay the
all
audience
of this is
trauma fees for singing? Sorry.
yeah, and all of this is like really good. The thing is, it looks like it's always been Europeans helping Muslims to try to rewrite their history, because that's a guy saying, okay, we expect to have Mecca in there, so let's just fix it a little bit. That must be Mecca, but that's actually just not the case. Do wonder why it's always been the so-called Orientalist, the one who have actually given stuff to Muslims to then just go on a tangent and says, oh yeah, it was in Ptolemy. But if this city was truly ancient, there wouldn't be one mention. That is as well something that is yes missing. You would have hundreds, if not thousands, of mentions. You would have pilgrims saying that they went there in the Judeo-Christian faith. But the fact that you would have only one mention of that city, that is already very suspicious. It would tell you there is more to that story. And then when we look and we realize that it's not the city at all, it makes sense. But yeah, there shouldn't be one account. There should be, in the thousands.
So I just want to say, all in all, I tend to agree with Dan Gibson. I think he did a lot of wonderful research regarding this, and yeah, it seems to make sense to me.
He
Um,
opened the door to the whole geographical argument. He really opened the door there. And I would agree here with what, the scenery is more like the description of Mecca in the Quran. I do agree with that. And also maybe the cave of Hira is here. This is a lot better than the location of Mecca, right? Let's have a look here. I mean, so if you have a look at Makoraba as a city, I mean, it is lush. This whole region is lush. You can see farms and it's green. It can support the kind of things that the Quran talks about. Okay, so then Al-Mahbisha is down here. It's very close to these major temples, and it was bombed by the Saudis. They dropped a couple of bombs on it from an F-16, and they destroyed a museum that had 12,000 artifacts inside it, linking this region's past with obviously modern day Islam, and they wiped out all of the evidence. So you drop a bomb on a museum, a pinpoint strike on a museum to wipe out ancient evidence. Right. Imagine how much information the museum would have had and how it would have helped in exposing Islam. Exactly. I think they were realizing people were starting to connect the dots and they took it out. So let's continue. Right. Now, this is Ptolemy's map accuracy from the 2nd century. This is how accurate Ptolemy's map was compared to modern maps. I mean, this is the further south you go, the more that the error multiplied. And notice, after the Mediterranean, it's all like there be dragons. We have no idea what's past the Med. So Ptolemy only knew this region here, and even what he knew is very badly drawn. So once you get past Egypt, like, yeah, we don't know, that's Ethiopia, what the hell, right? But it's tight to here, and then it just starts, you can see the error starts to spread once you get across the Med, and things just start to stretch out. So yeah. Now, this is a mid-15th century Florentine from Florence world map based on the first modified conic projection in Jacobus Angelus's 1406 Latin translation of Maximus Planude's late 13th century rediscovered Greek manuscripts of Ptolemy's 2nd century geography. Right? Serica is the far northeast of the world. That's up here, Serica. That's going to be important because that is where the guy was visited by an angel who gave him a book. You see, this is when angel gave a man a book. A big angel gave a guy a book and told him he's the messenger and he has to take this book and spread it to the world. And that happens in the late 1st, early 2nd century in Persia. And then terra incognita, because we don't know what the hell is below Ethiopia. So there you go, very accurate map. And of course, this is why it took forever for scientists to figure out where the heck Makaraba was. Any questions?
No, I'm good.
Ora Tex is right. Most of the Quran is from the north, the Levant. True enough, I'd agree. And there are at least some parts that come from the south, exactly, but nothing in the center. Yeah, isn't that just weird? And yes, please do not forget to like, share, subscribe. Please do also have a look at JC's channel. And yeah, tell me, Emmanuel, do you want to mention your work where we can find you as well?
Well, um, I still have my YouTube channel, and I'm streaming on my YouTube channel, and I think that's nice that we did that. But you know YouTube. YouTube is getting
YouTube doesn't like us.
frustrating. So I I put most of my effort nowadays. I put into my Substack.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. But also notice they've actually done the interior of Africa. They've got Libya over here. They've got Egypt. They've got rivers. They've got Ethiopia. They've got places over here. But notice they've got nothing here. There's no Mecca. There's just Arabia Felix. That's all it says, Arabia Felix. And no, but look, they know Persia. They know all of Asia here, right? But I see no Mecca. I see nothing in Arabia, if that was such a famous place. Isn't that interesting? Nothing there. Let's continue. That's a closer view here. Nothing in Arabia, just Arabia Felix. And then, of course, they know Israel. This whole region here is well known. This is Syria, Cyprus, and then they speak of Jerusalem and Israel here. So Jordan, but they don't know anything about that. Isn't it interesting? The most famous city, oldest city, but nothing on a map. Isn't that fascinating? And you can see how inaccurate. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you, but I talked with many Muslims, and like 90% of them seriously told me that Mecca is the center of the earth. I don't know how you can have a center on a on a globe. A globe doesn't. The center of a globe is inside. But okay, maybe they don't know that the earth is round. I don't know. But they seriously tell me Mecca is the center of the earth, and all your if you have a compass, it always points to Mecca. I think they're confusing their the tools they're using to to get the prayer direction. I think they're confusing that with a compass. So they seriously that's the thing. A lot of Muslims believe that. A lot of Muslims think Mecca is the magnetic center of the earth, and all the compasses point to there, and that's why planes and birds and flying donkeys don't fly over Mecca, because of the magnetic pole. It messes up their instruments or something.
Yep. So yeah, stories. Notice how badly off. You can see the section you have Italy versus what actual Italy. You can see how distorted the map is. So it's really, really inaccurate. Okay, so you cannot rely on these maps. There were some serious problems. Compare Arabia here with Arabia on a proper Google Earth map. Okay, on a satellite.
But the takeaway from this stuff that Muslims really do believe and keep telling me is that Mecca is extremely important. It's the most important place on the entire world.
No,
but it's not there. It's not there, but okay. Yeah.
That's why it's blank on the map. So this is a 1482 map. This is a printed map from the 15th century. This has got Ptolemy's description of the known inhabited world, printed in 1482. And look at the distortion. Now you've got something of Arabia, but notice not a whole lot. And yeah, there's no Mecca as far as I can tell. So yeah, we're a little bit short of detail. We've got not Mecca for sure. Yeah, you've got a couple of places in Yemen. You've got Arabia Felix, which is basically Yemen. Happy Arabia, which is green, which is Yemen. So you've got that, which is this section of Yemen over here. And that's what Ptolemy was referring to. And you can see this is not exactly, yeah. So a lot of places were known, but not Mecca, nothing there. So I think we can end there. That finishes the section on maps. Oh my God, the flying donkeys. Why don't we see them anymore? Yeah, exactly. They disappeared like Bigfoot. They were punched in the face by the angel gibberish, and they just died of shame. So yeah, so that's my story. and I'm sticking to it. So, guys, I think we'll end here. What do you guys think?
To explain a little bit what Emmanuel said is, well, the reason is they tried to make everything about Mecca. It used to be Jerusalem. That's why the Jerusalem thesis seems to be the go-to. I mean, where was Abraham in that region? Everything was up there. Now, if we look here briefly in volume 9 of Al-Tabari, there is this little section here, page 114. Let me zoom in a little bit. So the prophet is talking to people, and he asks about the sacred months. Then he would say to them, God has made your blood and your property sacrosanct until you meet your Lord, like the sanctity of these months of yours. Then he said, say, the messenger of God says, oh people, do you know what land this is? So he's supposed to be in Mecca. And then Rabi'ah would call out loudly, and they would say, the Holy Land. As far as I know, Mecca was not the Holy Land, and all of the descriptions, even from travelers going to Mecca, even hundreds of years later, they said this place seems to be cursed by God because nothing grows. But see what they were doing. They were trying to make the center of the world, to move it from Jerusalem to Mecca.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. That seems to be the case. So yeah, I think we can call it a night. I think we'll be back tomorrow with Usama, right? And we're going to be talking about where some of the legends in the Quran came from. Emmanuel, I'm sure you can join us if you'd like. I'll send you the link if you're free. Jump in. But yeah. So guys, for the audience, I hope that was educational. I hope you learned something of use. I hope it all made sense. I hope you can see there's a serious problem with the Islamic story. The history, the geography, the facts, the logic, none of it makes a lot of sense, but it does upset Muslims very much, and they don't give us straight answers.
Oh, before we go, I'd like to add something else. So, in the Quran, all of these stories are Judeo-Christian. Many of them, they're well from the Talmud and others from the Bible. And, the whole thing is a mess. But that's the Quran. So when we get to the traditions, that's where all of this mess really, really happens. And when we have something like the Burak, which you've shown today, that is not in the Quran. The Quran never talks about the Burak. That happens in the traditions. They invented that. So if we simply think, did they copy that from some stories in the Talmud or in the Bible? If the answer were yes, then that is the influence for the traditions. But that's not the case. It looks like the traditions, they are not copying from the Bible, from the Talmud, and from Judeo-Christian traditions. They are copying from something completely different. And it looks like particularly the Burak comes from farther east than Muslims would ever admit.
Yeah, so there's something wrong, something fishy about this story. So Emmanuel, final word to you, and we call it a night here.
If I get started, I'll just take up too much time again. So yeah, let's call it a night.
Okay, so guys, I hope that on a scale from 1 to 10, this was okay. Let us know in the comments. Thanks very much for joining us on this journey. I do hope you learned something. And yeah, we simply need to keep asking solid historical and archaeological questions about Islam, look at its roots, look at its parallels. And I think we can see the Islamic story does not add up. It cannot be what it says it is on the tin. Clearly, it's got different ingredients. So guys, thank you very much. Good night. God bless. And we'll see you all very soon.